All right, good morning, everybody. Got another one. I appreciate you people listening to me. I typed this up this week. The wisdom of Gamaliel. The wisdom of Gamaliel. In this study, I'd like to present my argument that Gamaliel, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, the famous rabbi who ruled at the time Jesus was 12 years old, may have been instrumental in facilitating the fulfillment of key elements we find in God's covenant with Israel. In this study, I would like to dig into the words of Gamaliel, spoken at the trial of the apostles and recorded in the 5th chapter of Acts. Acts chapter 5 is a record of the apostles of Jesus on trial before the religious leaders of Jerusalem. And it's during this trial that the godly wisdom of Gamaliel prevailed, thank God. Gamaliel's wisdom shines brightly in light of the promises that God gave to Abraham concerning the role of his descendants in relation to the Gentile nations. Genesis 22:18 is just one instance of God's covenant promises related to the stature of Israel relative to the nations of the earth. Let me read it to you. And the Lord said to Abraham, through your descendants, all the Gentile nations on the earth will be blessed because you obeyed me. And here's another verse we find in the 60th chapter of Isaiah, Isaiah 62:3. Look, O Zion, darkness now covers the earth. Deep darkness covers the nations, but the Lord shines on you, Zion. The Gentile nations see his glory around you, Zion. O Zion, the Gentile nations will come to your light. Gentile kings will come to the brightness of your sunrise. Now, these two Old Testament scriptures tell my heart that it has always been God's plan to unite the nations with Israel under one king, one Messiah. It also seems to me it is the nations who are the lesser of the two peoples under a messianic monarchy. The nations are recipient of the Abrahamic blessing that rests upon Jacob's natural descendants. The descendants of Jacob, through their everlasting descendant, Jesus, are the earthly channel of heavenly blessing for the nations. And I'm reminded of Hebrews chapter 7, which teaches the hierarchy of blessing between Abraham and Melchizedek. And I'll go ahead and read that portion of Hebrews chapter 7. And it was Melchizedek that blessed Abraham, the man who had God's promises. And it is indisputable that the more important person blesses the less important person. The lesser is blessed by the superior. And I think this mindset, the way of thinking that Paul presents here, that the lesser has not the power to bless the greater, this is pertinent to Paul's discourse recorded in the 2nd chapter of Ephesians concerning the Jews and the nations. And I'd like to read from Ephesians, the 2nd chapter, Ephesians 2:11 to 22. Excuse me. Ephesians 2, verse 11. I'm reading these from Expanded. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I grabbed these from the Expanded version. Okay, without Israel's Messiah, you Gentiles were not citizens of Israel. Without Israel's Messiah, you Gentiles had no part in the holy agreements. Without Israel's Messiah, you Gentile nations were aliens from the promise that God made to his people, that God made to Abraham. Without Israel's Messiah, you Gentiles are strangers from the Abrahamic, Mosaic, and Davidic covenants. Without Israel's Messiah, you Gentiles had no hope. Without Israel's Messiah, you Gentile nations do not know God. But now you Gentiles are in the Messiah, the Jewish Messiah. You Gentiles who were far away from God are now brought near to God through the blood of Israel's Messiah. Messiah himself is our peace, and Jesus made both Jews and Gentiles one people. Messiah, the Jewish Messiah, broke down the wall of hate, hostility, and enmity that divided the Gentiles, or the nations, from the Jews. The wall that kept the Gentiles out of Jerusalem's temple was broken down by Israel's Messiah. The precepts of Mosaic law that may have created division between Jew and Gentile has been laid aside by the sacrifice of the Jewish Messiah's own flesh. Jesus gave his own body, his own flesh, in order to accomplish this. And Messiah's purpose was and is to make the two groups of people one new man. To make two people one in the Messiah, the Jewish Messiah. To make one new humanity, a new humanity in Israel's Messiah. In this way, Messiah makes peace between the two peoples. It was also Messiah's purpose to end hatred between the two groups. It was Messiah's purpose to make the Jews and Gentiles into one body and bring them back to God. And Israel's Messiah did all of this with his death on the cross. Messiah came and proclaimed the good news to you who were far off, you natural-born Gentiles, of the peace between you and the Jews. And Messiah proclaimed the good news of peace with the Gentile nations to those of you who were near to God, the natural-born descendants of Abraham. Yes, it is through Messiah that we all, Jew and Gentile, have the right to come to the Father by one Spirit. Now you Gentiles are not foreigners or strangers any longer, but you are citizens together with God's holy people, the descendants of Abraham, the Jews. You belong to God's family. You are like a building that was built on the foundation of the New Testament apostles and the Old Testament prophets, with Messiah himself being the most important stone, the chief cornerstone in that building. And this is a building joined together in the Jewish Messiah. He makes it grow and become a holy temple in the Lord. And in Christ, you Gentiles are being built together with the Jews into a place where God can live through his Spirit. Okay, here's 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 12 and 13. A person's body is one cohesive unit, but it has many parts. And Messiah is like that. Some of us are Jews, some of us are Greeks, but we were all, both Jew and Gentile, we were all baptized into one body through one Spirit. Both Jew and Greek, slave and free, were made to drink of one Spirit. Okay, I'll now attempt to share the source of my deep respect for the wisdom demonstrated by Gamaliel the elder. And I do thank you for letting me share my opinion on this matter with you. And I'll preface this commentary with this opening that I believe it is the fear of God, and a genuine fear of God, that leads to a love and a respect for the natural-born descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And this fear of the Lord was graciously granted to me, I believe, granted to my heart by the Spirit of Messiah, the Jewish Messiah. And I firmly believe the love and respect I have for Jacob is a work of providence. And it's a fulfillment of the Abrahamic covenant. The fear of the Lord imparted into my inward parts leads to a holy wisdom that leads me, that teaches me to bless Israel. And this wisdom, granted with kindness so undeserved, teaches me to value Zion, the holy throne of David. And trust me, this fear of the Lord did not exist in my heart, much less mind, until I granted the Spirit of the Jewish Messiah access to my inner being. And if not for the wisdom of Gamaliel that we're going to read about, there is every chance I would not have heard the truth regarding Jesus, Israel's king, who became my own personal Messiah. And I'm not Jewish. We find Gamaliel's wisdom on display in the 5th chapter of Acts, chapter 5, Acts 5, verses 32 to 39. The religious leaders wanted to kill the followers of Jesus. But a Pharisee that represented a minority on the Sanhedrin named Gamaliel stood up in the meeting. He was a teacher of the law, and all the people respected him. Gamaliel ordered the apostles to leave the meeting for a little while, and he said, "People of Israel, be careful what you are planning to do to these men. Remember when Theudas rose up and started a rebellion? He claimed he was a great man. He claimed to be a somebody. About 400 people joined him. But he was killed, and all of his followers scattered. They weren't able to do a thing. They failed. Their plans came to nothing." Later, a man named Judas came from Galilee who led a tax revolt at the time of the census. This man led a sizable company of followers, but like Theudas, they scattered when Judas was killed. So now I tell you, stay away from these men. Stay away from these followers of Jesus. Leave them alone. If their activity comes from human authority, it's going to fail. But if it is from divine authority, you won't be able to stop them. You might even be finding yourselves fighting against God. So the religious leaders of Jerusalem agreed with Gamaliel. I don't think I exaggerate when I say that the nations of the earth may have been doomed to hell if not for the wisdom of this man, Gamaliel the elder. Thank you, guys.